So most media, including television, conforms to the political line in Turkey. In the aftermath of the failed coup, the government closed down 200 media outlets, including 53 newspapers, 37 radio stations, 34 TV channels, 29 publishing houses, 20 magazines, and 6 news agencies. All of these with accused links to the Gulen movement, Kurdish opposition, or leftist groups. And consequently, a total of 2,308 media workers and journalists have lost their jobs. The government has canceled hundreds of press accreditations, revoked passports of an unknown number of journalists and their family members to ban them from traveling abroad. And in addition, the government imprisoned a record-breaking number of journalists in wake of the coup attempt. The Platform for Independent Journalism reported that at least 126 journalists and media workers were in prison in Turkey as of October 2019, many of those in long-term solitary confinement. The absence of freedom of expression is not only a recurring problem for journalists, but also for citizens as well. In 2018, the Ministry of Interior reported that more than 7,000 individuals were detained for their social media posts. Wikipedia has been blocked in Turkey since April of 2017. And currently, out of 180 countries, Turkey ranks 157th on the Press Freedom Index of Reporters Without Borders. So our next guest, Abdulhamit Bilici, is a Turkish journalist and media executive. Bilici was one of the most prominent and influential media figures in Turkey, and as the last editor-in-chief of Zaman, the country's most widely circulated newspaper, and CEO of Fesa Publications. Bilici's newspapers were taken over by the government with a raid on March 5th, 2016, and the Fesa Media Group was shut down after the July 15th failed coup attempt. Bilici was forced into exile under the threat of an arrest warrant, and we're very honored to have Mr. Bilici here with us today.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you. It is a very kind introduction, more than necessary.
Well,
Thank you.
Sounds like you've had a pretty fascinating journey. I was wondering, would you mind kind of telling us or sharing a little bit more about your experience of what happened, and then maybe we could talk a little bit more about.
I'm a journalist for over 25 years. So I did not study journalism. I studied political science and international relations at one of the top universities of my country, Turkey. And I joined just after graduating to journalism as a very different career that I did not imagine before. But it attracted me a lot. And I started as a reporter and learned the job in the job. I mean, how much I don't know I learned, but I tried to learn. And after 20 years, I came to the position of the highest position of these media companies. One was the news agency, Cihan, as you said in the introduction, and the other was Zaman Daily, which was the largest circulated daily in Turkey. Everything was fine. We were very successful, although we were a young media group in Turkey, which was started in mid-80s. So we don't have a huge history like BBC or New York Times. But it became very successful with some basic principles. So, for instance, one of the efforts that we were, the newspaper, the founders of this media was trying to help, was to fight against fake news. So this fake news is not the fake news that you hear in this debate started by Mr. Trump. This is real fake news. I mean, the stories that are made up. So this was one of the efforts that made this media, our media, very attractive to people. And the other thing was to support democracy in Turkey. When you think of Turkey, it is a country that has been categorized as a democracy with multi-party system after the 1950s. So we don't have a huge tradition of democracy. Before that, we had one-party system, and then before that, we had an empire. So, but this democratic tradition was interrupted 5 times in last 60 years with military coups. So the newspaper and the founders were put a big priority to bring Turkey into a real democracy. So for that, it brings me to the other principle that was very important for the media, to join European Union. So Turkey applied to join European Union in 1980s, and it was a desire to be a full-fledged democracy and to be part of the European economy, of course, the European health system, everything. So the newspaper, we were supporting that idea very much because it would bring the East and West together, Muslim world and the Christian world together. So it would have very positive impact. And of course, the newspaper was supporting, other than doing good journalism, quality journalism, trying to support building bridges between different parts of Turkish society. There may be leftists, liberals, conservatives. You know, in a normal day in my newspaper, you could see a conservative columnist, a Kurdish columnist, a liberal columnist writing on the same issue from their different perspectives. So it was a kind of like of a garden of ideas, and we were very much happy with all those things. And when the ruling party was established in 2002, they promised that they will make Turkey a better democracy, and they will support Turkey joining European Union, and they were supporting dialogue between cultures and the faiths, let's say, and that made us very identical in terms of political orientation. So we supported all these policies as they were supported by all Democrats in Europe and in America, in Canada. So the Erdogan was supported very much in his first 8-10 years because he was doing right things for the country, for democracy, for economy, for people. And we were supporting them. I had very good relations with the president, with the prime minister at that time. I was flying on their jets to national, domestic, or international meetings. So I was interviewing them. They were visiting our paper, etc. So we had such good relations. But after 2013, things started to change. And the first sign came with the Gezi protest, which took place in the June or the end of May 2013. And when Turkey, and at the time when Turkey was rising as a democracy, it was a star of a model Muslim democracy. And the whole world was very much excited to see that Turkey transforming into a better democracy as a Muslim country. Maybe it could be a good exception. So, I mean, in contrast to all these expectations, the government crashed protesters who were asking not to demolish a green park and a park and found and establish, construct a shopping mall on top of it. So this was a little issue, but turned into big because the government did not act as it was expected from any democratic government. Instead of listening to those protesters and the young people to try to respond to their accusations or demands, they crashed it. Some people lost their lives. And there was a very interesting event at the time that the CNN International, BBC, and whole international media was covering those protests. The Turkish media, like the CNN-affiliated CNN Turk, was broadcasting a penguin documentary. This was ridiculous, of course, but because they do it, it is journalism, but it is because of fear. Mm-hmm. So the Erdogan made some phone calls not to show those protests. He was trying to contain them. So this was the beginning of a new era for Turkey. We are talking about 2013, 7 years ago. And lots of journalists were purged and fired from their jobs who continued to be critical of these harsh measures against democratic people, against people using their democratic rights. So people lost their jobs in the media, and we started to feel that this is another AKP, another Erdogan. So at the end of the same year, there has been a corruption investigation, which revealed that the Erdogan's family and his ministers involved in a scheme that involved getting bribes in return to helping a Turkish American businessman to help Iran to sell its oil to international markets, because Iran was under sanctions. So Turkey was giving that service to Iran, Turkish government, and in return they were being paid bribes to shut their eyes, or to use Turkish banks and Turkish bureaucratic mechanisms to hide that international sanction evasion act, which is illegal domestically and internationally. So when we covered that story, when we published about the corruption allegations, and we were critical of this new orientation of one-man rule or authoritarianism, autocracy, then we became the enemy of the Erdogan and his government. They canceled our press cards. They called people boycott our newspaper, not to buy the newspaper. Our subscribers who were closer to Erdogan's political line, they canceled their subscriptions. So we were getting more visitors from tax inspection division of the government, a lot of things. So even Erdogan was calling some business people not to purchase advertisement from our company. And of course, there are lots of court cases against our reporters, our institution. So all of them was to silence us or to make us a mouthpiece or a puppet of government. And we resisted that pressure, and it continued until 2016. 3 years. So 3 years of a harsh struggle, a government defining you as enemy, and then doing everything possible at their disposal. And then we were trying to survive under economic pressures, the judicial pressures, death threats, etc. So we did not change our political orientation, and I am very proud of that. Meanwhile, and in March 2016, with a kangaroo court decision, they said they are appointing trustees to the board of our company.
Wow.
And they came with a brutal police force. They occupied our headquarters in Istanbul, and they kicked us out, the editors. I was the CEO of the company that had a news agency, and the most popular newspaper, an English daily newspaper, a lot of media outlets that we were managing. I was trying to manage. So in 24 hours, they hired another mouthpiece journalist, and then they changed the newspaper into a government-oriented paper. And our readers protested. The newspaper circulation was 700,000 before they occupied our newspaper, and it dropped to 5,000. So in 1 week. So this was a very big failure, and it's a very dark day for our democracy, for our country. But this turned to be a routine for the Erdogan government. And before us, they shut down 16 channels of the Samanyolu Media Group. Before that, they shut down Bugün Media Group in 2015. Maybe some couple of months before they shut down our newspaper. So they appointed their trustees to the board, and they hired, as I said, another editor. And the newspaper changed 180 degrees in terms of its policies and its editorial approach. But this did not satisfy Erdogan. So for 4 months, 5 months, they continued like that. But when coup happened, when this notorious coup attempt happened in July 15, 2016, same year, They shut down the newspaper altogether, and 200 more TV channels, news agencies, radio stations, and from different backgrounds. I mean, leftist, liberals, Kurdish, whoever has been critical were silenced indeed in the aftermath of the coup attempt. And they raided my home to arrest me on 23rd of July, just maybe 10 days after the coup. But I already left the country in the beginning of April this year, April 2016. So luckily I was not there, I was not arrested, but a lot of my friends whom I was working for years were arrested. Some of them are still in jail for 4 years now. Some of them got life sentences, including our chief designer. You know, a designer has nothing to do with politics if it is a political dispute. So he was our designer, a very talented artist indeed. But they jailed him. They gave him a life sentence. And he's then in the appeal process, they reduced it to 10 years. Now he's in solitary confinement. This is just one of the 120 journalists in jail. So I have columnists, young reporters. I have, for instance, a reporter who is in jail who started the job 2 years ago. So I was a talented journalist, but for nonsense reasons, they are in jail. And some of them finished their terms of punishment, but they are not released. So this is unfortunately a Turkey, which, I mean, a government that we were supporting,
yeah,
but turned into something just opposite. And my orientation, my perspective about Turkey is same. I did not change. My newspaper did not change. The government changed, and then they started to establish, create not a democracy but an autocracy. Mm-hmm. And it was impossible for me to support such a horrible change, and it is destroying country now.
I mean, the value of the press, I think, is something that most people maybe take for granted, especially here in the West, and the importance of press freedom. It sounds like this real shift from, you know, this great relationship to really a propaganda, a really intentional propaganda and really intentional silencing. What are your hopes for moving forward? Like, what, in terms of the press freedom and even media in Turkey, are there possibilities? Are there lights, or do you see any hope or ways that we can shift this?
You know, we cannot live without hope.
Yes.
We cannot survive without hope. So I am hopeful. I keep my hope, but my optimism, decreases every day. So I try to look at the positive signs. So what are the positive signs? Turkey doesn't have natural gas or oil that will finance a dictatorship like Iran is doing or like Russia is doing. So, and Turkey is very much integrated with the world, especially with the European economies. Half of Turkey's trade is with Europe, and it is very essential part of Turkish well-being. And Turkey has a history of 200 years of modernization, westernization, which transformed Turkey in a very great extent. And of course, Turkey, when I look at the political dynamics, I see that support to Erdogan is not increasing because of the, economic problems rising, his popularity declining. But he is now able to control all state institutions like the army, police, judiciary, media, parliament, everything. Because of that, he is able to survive. And he is a very smart politician in terms of building new alliances, even with his worst enemies. Yes. So he survives, but his popularity is not rising. And in the last year local elections, his party lost Ankara, the capital, and Istanbul, which is the biggest city in Turkey. And Erdogan is having tough times to convince people that what he is doing in terms of building a one-man rule. So he's not able to sell it, but the problem is he controls the state now. So when someone controls the state, it's not easy to fight, to struggle against your state, you know. So the police, the judges, and all the institutions turns against you. And since the media is a very crucial part in that, so 95% of media is under his control. So there is 5% or 10% remaining for the opposition to share their perspective about what's going on really in Turkey. So there's a very big struggle. But despite all these, the ruling party lost, as I said, the local elections. And people are not, I mean, the economy is not doing well. But I don't know. You know, I was talking recently, sorry, with a lawyer from Iran, because Turkey is getting very much identical to the Iranian regime. Maybe they are inspired from, you know, when they started, they were inspired from European Union, from European countries, but now they are inspired from Russia, from Iran, and from other authoritarian countries. So they are learning from their practices, you know, and they transform Turkish political system into something like the Iranian or other model. So I talked to this lawyer from Iran who told me that 70% of Iranian people hate the regime, the current regime. And there has been different protests taking place in last couple of years. But the regime is so strong. I mean, when such a sick ideology controls all state institutions, it is very difficult for people to change, even if they do not like it. So I think Turkey came to such a similar point. But despite all these negative and pessimistic scenarios, I think Turkey will not go into a full-fledged dictatorship. This is my hope and my prayer.
Okay. Well, I hope so too. I know that, you know, the compounding of all this, the censorship of the media and all these things, they create this deeper culture of fear within countries, and let's hope that the transition can happen. So, Mr. Bilici, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today from Virginia. It was so lovely to meet you and have you with us.
Thank you. Turkey is a model now how to protect democracies being hijacked by populist leaders. So I urge my colleagues around the world to study, to read more about how Turkey transformed from a model of democracy into an autocracy now in 5-6 years. That's amazing. That is, I mean, so terrible story, but there are a lot of lessons to be learned.
Yeah, and it's such an important place in our world. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Hopefully
Nida.
we'll see you again.